the sprawling valleys of Valles Marineris, beneath the shadow of towering red cliffs, a secret gathering was underway. The meeting place was an abandoned outpost, long forgotten by Earth's governing forces, but never erased from the memory of those who still called Mars their home. It was here that the seeds of rebellion were being sown. At the forefront of the dimly lit chamber stood Lucas Brooks, a young Marinian with a steely gaze and a fiery spirit. His eyes, sharp with determination, swept across the faces of his compatriots. They were few in number, but each one had been handpicked for their courage, their skills, and, most importantly, their unyielding desire to see Mars free from Earth's dominion. "We can't live under Earth's rule forever," Lucas began, his voice low but resonant, carrying the weight of suppressed anger. "We're suffocating. Mars is our home, yet we're treated like tenants, forced to obey laws written across the void of space." The air inside the outpost was stale, recycled through broken vents that hadn't been maintained in decades. Dust drifted in thin beams of light that cut through cracks in the ceiling. The rebels sat at makeshift tables, their eyes on Lucas. Some clenched their fists, others shifted nervously in their seats, but all of them listened. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Celine Ward, standing beside Lucas, stepped forward. Her sharp features were etched by years of frustration. "They're hiding something from us," she said, her voice measured but cutting. "There's more to this so-called terraforming than they admit. I've seen fragments of their plans, documents that don't add up. Earth is keeping secrets, and if we want freedom, we must uncover them." The silence that followed was heavy. Lucas could feel their doubts pressing in, but also their growing hunger for truth. From the back, Ethan Sawyer leaned forward, his hands tinkering with a worn-out comm device. The kid was young, restless, but there was genius in his eyes. "I can breach their mainframe," he said, his voice quiet but laced with confidence. "Surveillance, drone relays, orbital command channels, I know where to slip in. Whatever they're hiding, I'll find it." A flicker of hope passed through the room. Lucas gave a short nod, already seeing the path forming in his mind. "Then it begins here. But understand this, Earth security is tightening. They know unrest is growing, and they're afraid. Afraid of us. Afraid of what we'll become." The room hushed. For a moment, only the faint hum of the outpost's failing systems filled the air. Then, whispers of strategy began to snake through the chamber. Plans half-spoken, dreams whispered like prayers. Caleb Flynn leaned forward, scarred hands gripping the table. His voice carried the rasp of a soldier who'd seen too many battles. "We'll need more than stolen intel. Weapons, safe houses, supply lines. Earth won't play fair. They'll send dogs after us the moment we make a move." Julian Black, always sharp-tongued, smirked bitterly from the shadows. "Then we hit first. Cut their legs out before they realize we're standing." Ava Moreno shook her head, her long dark hair falling over her shoulders as she leaned in. "We don't need more blood on the streets yet. If Earth thinks we're terrorists, they'll turn every citizen against us. We need proof. We need their lies exposed." The tension crackled between them. Different voices, different strategies, but all circling the same fire. Lucas inhaled slowly, feeling the grit of Martian dust sting his lungs. He remembered being a child, staring up at the domed sky of New Olympus, listening to Earth's governors promise a brighter future. Terraforming, prosperity, integration, lies all of it. Every promise had become another chain. He looked around the room. Their faces glowed faintly under the cold, flickering lights. Warriors, thinkers, dreamers. Each one of them ready to burn everything they had left for a chance at freedom. Sophia Reed's soft voice broke the silence. "If we fail, they'll bury us. Not just us, but our children. Mars will never belong to us again." Emily Patel leaned back in her chair, her tone sharp with defiance. "Then we don't fail." A spark passed between them, something unspoken but alive. Lucas straightened, letting the weight of their attention settle on him. "This is the first step. Ethan gets us into their system. Celine and I will build the framework of resistance. Cells, networks, people we can trust. Caleb, Julian, Gabriel, you'll find us weapons. Ava, Lily, Charlotte, you'll start the groundwork for public support. Mars doesn't just need fighters. It needs believers. The plan was fragile, held together with scraps of hope and stolen breath. But in that moment, it was enough. Dust rattled loose from the ceiling as the wind outside roared across the cliffs of Valles Marineris. The chamber seemed to tremble with it, as if Mars itself was listening. Lucas clenched his fists at his side. The fire in his chest was no longer just his own. It was theirs, a collective heartbeat, pulsing in defiance. Mars would belong to the Marinians once more. The wind howled through the jagged cliffs outside, a hollow, endless sound that made the outpost's steel bones groan. Inside, silence pressed on us as Ethan Sawyer hunched over a salvaged console, fingers dancing across the cracked surface. Sparks flickered from the ancient circuitry, and the stale, recycled air smelled faintly of burnt copper. I stood close enough to see the reflection of his eyes in the fractured screen. Focused, unblinking. He was younger than most here, his face still holding a softness the rest of us had lost long ago. Yet there was steel in him, the kind that came from knowing your mind was sharper than the weapons pointed at you. The room gathered in a half-circle. Caleb Flynn leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his scarred knuckles tapping impatient rhythms. Julian Black slouched in a corner chair, his expression unreadable, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Ava Moreno paced, boots echoing on the cracked floor, while Celine Ward stood still and sharp, her gaze never leaving the screens. Ethan's voice broke the silence, soft but steady. They layered their systems deeper than I thought. Encrypted subnetworks, rerouted relays. Earth doesn't trust us with air, let alone open frequencies. Caleb's growl rumbled low. Just cut through it already. We're burning time while their drones keep watching every damn street. A faint smile crossed Ethan's lips. Patience. You want brute force? They'll trace us in minutes. You want precision? You wait. Julian chuckled dryly. Listen to the boy, Flynn. He knows his wires better than you know your gun. Caleb's glare snapped across the room, but Ethan didn't flinch. His fingers kept moving, tracing codes that, to the rest of us, were meaningless lines of static. I shifted my weight, the floor creaking beneath me. My pulse matched the rhythm of his keystrokes. This was our first strike. Not with bullets, but with silence and stolen eyes. If we failed now, we'd fail before the fight even began. A sharp beep broke through the tension. Ethan's eyes lit with something close to triumph. We're in. The screen burst alive with streams of data, and then images, grainy, black and white feeds from orbital drones hovering over Marinian cities. Streets lit by neon signs. Crowds moving beneath domed skies. The kind of footage Earth's officials saw daily, the view of wardens over a prison. Ava leaned closer, her breath catching. God! They see everything. Celine's jaw tightened. Every movement, every word. The images shifted, industrial zones, wide barren fields, mines carved into Mars' surface like wounds. Earth called it terraforming progress. But the feeds showed convoys hauling minerals, or piled high, workers moving under armed guards. Julian's smirk faded. Terraforming, huh? Looks more like they're strip mining the planet bare. Gabriel Hart, quiet until now, stepped forward. His voice was low, steady. That's hematite. And titanium. Maybe palladium. They're pulling resources no colony should need in that volume. Ethan tapped a key, zooming in on a convoy line crawling across a dust plain. Cross-checking manifests. Numbers scrolled fast. His brow furrowed. These shipments don't match any public records. They're falsifying everything. Celine's voice cut through like a blade. This is it. Proof. Earth isn't terraforming for us. They're bleeding Mars dry to feed their own industries. The room fell silent. The images burned into our eyes, undeniable and cold. Ava's voice trembled with restrained fury. My father worked those mines. He thought he was building a future for us. Caleb's fist slammed into the wall. Dust fell from the ceiling. Future? They're using us like slaves. Julian leaned forward, his smirk gone. Then we stop playing defense. We take the fight to them, cut their supply lines, burn their convoys. Ava snapped back, her eyes blazing. You start a war now, every civilian pays the price. We don't even have weapons to fight them head-on. Celine raised a hand, steadying the storm. We don't rush. Not yet. We build. We spread this truth quietly, carefully. Let Mars see Earth's lies for itself. The room erupted in overlapping voices. Rage, fear, strategy. I heard Caleb demand strikes, Ava argue for restraint, Julian hunger for fire. Ethan muttered code under his breath, trying to hold the link. I stood in the center of it all, the weight pressing heavier on my chest with each passing second. The feed still scrolled on the screen. Faces of workers, convoys of stolen minerals. Entire cities watched from above like ants in a glass case. The choice sharpened before me. War or patience? Blood or proof? Both roads led to risk, but only one carried hope of survival. I raised my hand, and the voices fell quiet. The chamber's hum filled the silence again, broken only by the crackle of old wiring. We have what we came for, I said, my voice low but firm. This is the truth. Earth will never free us willingly, but we can't throw lives away without cause. We use this. We show it to the people. When they see Earth's lies, they'll stand with us. Caleb's eyes narrowed, anger smoldering. But he didn't speak. Ava gave the smallest nod, relief flickering across her face. Julian leaned back, frustrated, but silent. Celine's gaze locked with mine, hard but approving. Ethan let out a long breath and began shutting down the system, erasing traces of the breach. I'll copy the files. Secure them. We move fast, or they'll know I was inside. Outside, the wind roared like some restless beast against the cliffs. The walls shuddered with it, and I felt Mars itself listening again, hungry, waiting. Our first strike hadn't drawn blood, but it had cut deeper than any weapon. Now Mars knew the truth. The outpost had never felt this crowded. Word of the stolen surveillance feeds spread like wildfire through the underground, and for the first time in years, I saw sparks in the eyes of ordinary Marinians. Dockworkers, miners, medics. The kind of people who had stopped believing freedom was possible. They whispered about us now, not by name but by the idea of us. Rebels, fighters, shadows against the sky. But whispers weren't enough. Whispers couldn't stand against Earth's fleets or their orbital guns. We had truth, but truth alone didn't stop bullets. That was when the message arrived. It wasn't carried by any runner, nor tapped through the usual encrypted channels. It appeared in Ethan's system like a ghost, lines of code rearranging themselves into words across the console screen. He stared at it for long moments before calling us over. You want freedom? We can give you teeth. Meet at Acheron Rift. 3 nights from now. Midnight. No name. No signature. Just coordinates. Julian leaned over Ethan's shoulder, grinning like a man who smelled chaos. Finally, someone who speaks our language. Celine's voice was colder. Or someone who wants to lure us into a trap. Caleb cracked his knuckles, eyes narrowing at the screen. Trap or not, we can't ignore it. Whoever this is, they know about us. Too much already. Ava folded her arms, her voice steady but sharp. 3 nights, in the middle of nowhere? It stinks. But her eyes flicked to me. If they're real, if they truly have what we don't, we can't afford to turn away. The decision weighed on me heavier than stone. Mars had always been a battlefield of dust and survival, but this was different. A hidden hand reaching out from the shadows, promising weapons, power. But shadows had their own agendas. Still, we went. The journey to Acheron Rift was like stepping into the bones of a dead planet. The terrain was jagged, scarred by ancient quakes. The sky above painted in deep shades of crimson as the sun dipped low. The air was thin here, colder, and each breath inside my helmet felt heavier. We moved in silence across the ridges, our small convoy hidden under camouflage nets when possible. Dust clung to everything, our boots, our lungs, even our thoughts. Caleb walked at my side, his rifle slung over his shoulder. Feels like we're walking into an ambush. Julian chuckled behind us, his voice dripping with mock cheer. That's because we probably are. Ava shot him a glare. You never shut up, do you? Julian's grin widened. Not when the silence feels like a funeral march. Their words faded under the low hum of the wind. I kept my eyes forward, scanning the horizon. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every rock formation felt like watching eyes. Midnight came, and with it, silence. We reached the coordinates. Nothing but broken ridges and black stone under a star-pierced sky. The land stretched out like a scar, desolate and empty. Ethan checked his wristpad again. This is the spot, Caleb muttered. Then where the hell are they? The answer came without sound. Figures emerged from the dark like they were part of it. Shapes cloaked in adaptive camouflage that shimmered against the stone. Half a dozen at first, then more. Weapons unlike anything I'd ever seen glinted faintly in the starlight. Sleek, angular, humming with restrained power. One stepped forward. A tall figure, masked, voice distorted through a modulator. You are the Marinians. Celine's hand hovered near her sidearm. Who are you? The mask tilted slightly, studying us. We are what Earth fears. We are what you will become if you dare. We are the Shadow Marinians. The name hung in the cold night air like a blade. Julian gave a low whistle. Dramatic. Caleb ignored him, stepping forward. Why us? Why now? The figure's voice was calm, measured, every word deliberate. Because Mars bleeds and Earth sharpens its knives on your bones. You have fire but no weapon. We give you one. We give you war. The others shifted, murmuring. Ava's tone cut sharp. Why help us? What do you gain? The mask turned toward her. For a moment silence, then, freedom is never given. It is taken. We will see Earth burn. But to burn it, we need you. I studied them, their posture, their precision, the way their weapons hummed like living things. Whoever they were no ordinary rebels. They had training, resources, secrets buried deep. What do you want from us? I asked. The figure reached behind and pulled something forward. A weapon, sleek, black, humming faintly with a blue glow along its edge. They held it out not as a gift but as a test. Take it. See if you are worthy of what comes next. I stepped forward, my hand closing around the grip. It was lighter than I expected, but the hum vibrated through my bones. Alive, dangerous. My chest tightened. This was power unlike anything we'd held before. The figure's voice came low, almost like a whisper through the modulator. You will fight in the dust, in the shadows. Silent, precise. Earth will not see you until it is too late. This is how you win. The others leaned in, eyes fixed on the weapon in my hand. Ethan's breath hitched softly. Caleb's eyes burned with hunger. Ava's lips tightened, torn between awe and fear. I lowered the weapon, but the weight of it stayed heavy in my chest. Celine spoke, her voice steady but sharp. If we accept this, there's no turning back. We won't just be rebels. We'll be soldiers in someone else's war. The masked figure inclined their head. Mars is already at war. You only choose whether to fight or to be buried. The silence after stretched long. Dust swept across the rift, rattling stones. My thoughts spun. The people back in the domes, the stolen resources, the lies carved into every promise from Earth. I saw the fear in Ava's eyes, the fire in Caleb's, the smirk fading from Julian's lips. Finally, I raised the weapon. Its blue glow cut against the Martian night like a spark waiting for flame. We'll fight, I said, the words tasting of iron. But Mars fights for Mars, not for shadows. The figure's mask tilted again, as though considering me. Then, a slow nod. Then you are ready. Behind them, more of the cloaked figures stepped forward, laying out crates that hissed as they opened. Inside, advanced rifles, explosives compact and silent, comms gear that looked alien compared to our scrap tech. Weapons of a new war. Our people moved closer, hesitating only a moment before touching the future laid out before them. Caleb's grin was savage. Ethan's fingers trembled with excitement as he traced the comm units. Even Celine's mask of skepticism cracked slightly as she examined the rifles. But Ava stood apart, her voice low. Weapons change battles, but they also change people. I heard her, but I couldn't let it sway me. Not now. The Shadow Marinians had given us what Earth had denied us all our lives, power. As we loaded the crates onto our convoy, the masked leader gave one final warning. Trust no one. Earth is already among you. Betrayal walks with every step. Remember this. And then, as silently as they had appeared, they faded back into the darkness, leaving us alone under the Martian sky. I stared at the weapon in my hands, its glow casting faint light across the dust. For the first time, I felt the war was real. Not whispers, not stolen images, but blood waiting to be spilled. Mars had been given teeth. The question now was whether we would use them to bite or to devour ourselves. The crates from the Shadow Marinians changed everything. We had been whispers in the dust, ghosts scrawling graffiti on Earth's perfect facade. Now, with weapons that hummed with alien precision and explosives that could bring down armored convoys, we became something more. A threat, promise, a storm waiting to break. But storms don't wait forever. The first strike came at dawn, weeks after the rift. A convoy of Earth's mineral haulers crawled across the Red Plains, escorted by armored drones and a handful of manned transports. We hit them in silence. Explosives planted in the dust tore open the lead vehicle, flames licking into the thin Martian air. Rifles glowed blue in our hands as we cut through drones before they even had a chance to recalibrate. It was over in minutes. The convoy burned, the minerals scattered across the sand like bones. For the first time, Earth's machines bled for Mars. But victories are noisy things. No matter how quiet the strike, no matter how fast we disappeared into the canyons, Earth heard. And Earth responded. The retaliation came in New Olympus. The city stood as Earth's jewel on Mars, domes stretching high, streets lined with polished steel, neon burning bright even in the thin daylight. It was where Earth's governors lived, where their security forces kept watch, where every promise of terraforming and prosperity was paraded like a mask. And it was where we chose to strike hardest. The plan had been Celine's. A coordinated assault. Cells striking across the city to stretch Earth's defenses thin. Sabotage in their comms relays. Explosives planted in their supply depots. And us, the core, driving straight into their armored garrison. As we crouched in the shadows of a side street, the hum of our weapons alive in our hands, I felt my chest tighten. The neon glow reflected in Ava's eyes as she adjusted her helmet. Caleb's grin was feral, rifle cradled like an old friend. Ethan tapped furiously at his wrist pad, muttering code under his breath. Julian checked the timer on his charges, lips curved in that dangerous smirk. Celine's voice was sharp in the comms. We hit on my mark. Fast, clean. No hesitation. Caleb growled low, eager. Been waiting for this. Ava shot him a glare. You always want blood. Just remember, civilians live here. Julian chuckled. Collateral happens, sweetheart. Her voice snapped like a whip. Don't call me that again. The tension between them was a knife's edge, but I didn't cut it. Not now. My eyes stayed locked on the glow of Earth's garrison across the plaza. Fortified walls, guards in polished armor, drones sweeping the skies like hawks. I breathed slow. This was more than a raid. This was a message. Celine's voice cut through. Mark. The city erupted. Explosions thundered across New Olympus as distant cells triggered their charges. Sirens wailed, lights flared, and the sky itself seemed to shake. We surged forward. Caleb was first, his rifle spitting blue fire that cut down the nearest guard before the man even raised his weapon. Julian's charges blew open the gates, the blast echoing through the domes. Ethan's wrist pad crackled, and suddenly the drones above flickered, their feeds scrambled, their wings spiraling out of control. I was inside before I even realized it, boots hitting steel floors, rifle burning hot in my hands. The air smelled of ozone and blood. Shouts echoed through the garrison as Earth's soldiers scrambled. One lunged from the side, rifle raised. I squeezed the trigger, and the weapon in my hands hummed. spitting a bolt of energy that tore through armor like paper. The man crumpled, smoke rising from the hole in his chest. Caleb roared behind me, his laughter twisted with fury as he cut down another squad. Ava's voice rang sharp in the comms. "Hold the line. Civilians in the South Dome. Keep the fire contained." Julian ignored her, setting charges deeper into the garrison. His laughter echoed like a madman's hymn. Celine's voice was calm, precise, guiding. "Push them into the barracks. Box them in." We moved like shadows, weapons singing, explosions blooming. The garrison shook with every strike. For a moment I believed we could topple Earth here, in their jewel city, in the heart of their power. But Earth had not ruled the stars by weakness. The counterstrike came fast, brutal. Heavy transports dropped from orbit, their thrusters screaming. Doors slammed open, and soldiers in reinforced armor poured into the city. Their rifles spat fire hotter than the sun, cutting through walls, through bodies. Civilians screamed, scattering into the streets. Ava's voice cracked in my ear. "They're hitting the South Dome. Too many, Lucas." Caleb's growl turned into a curse. "Fall back or fight?" Julian shouted over the roar of fire. "Fight, damn it. We've got them bleeding. Finish it." I ducked behind cover as a blast tore the ground where I'd stood. Heat seared my skin. My heart pounded, thoughts scattering. Civilians, soldiers, fire. Celine's voice cut in cold as steel. "Decision, Lucas. Now." My throat burned. Choices narrowed to two jagged paths. Pull back and survive, or press forward and drown in blood. The screams outside made the choice for me. "Pull back," I shouted, voice raw. "Now." The order burned like betrayal on my tongue, but I forced it out. Caleb cursed, but moved. Ava dragged two civilians from the rubble, her rifle firing one-handed as she shielded them. Ethan scrambled, hands flying as he tried to cover our retreat with hacked drones. Julian raged, but even he followed, detonating charges behind us to slow Earth's advance. We fell back through the burning streets, neon shattered, smoke rising into the dome like a funeral pyre. Civilians stared as we passed, some in awe, some in terror. To them, we were heroes or butchers, maybe both. By the time we reached the outskirts, our numbers had thinned. Blood streaked Caleb's armor. Ethan limped, pale but alive. Ava's face was ash, her eyes dark. Celine walked steady, her jaw clenched, her silence heavier than words. Julian spat into the dust, fury boiling. We had them, and you ran." I faced him, chest heaving, rage and grief tangled in my throat. "We didn't have them. We had fire. They had an army. You want to die screaming in the streets? Fine. But I won't burn Mars just to feed your pride." The silence after was sharp, broken only by the distant rumble of Earth's transports reclaiming the city. For the first time we had struck openly, and for the first time we had bled for it. The Battle of New Olympus was not victory. It was a wound, a warning, a promise that Earth would not let Mars go quietly. As the smoke rose behind us, I felt the truth settle heavy in my bones. We had drawn our line in the dust. There was no going back. Mars was at war. The weeks after New Olympus were drenched in blood. Earth's retaliation came like fire from the heavens. Convoys of armored transports roared through Martian settlements, drones swarmed the skies, and orbital strikes scorched the edges of rebel territory. They weren't hunting soldiers anymore. They were punishing the people. Every day we heard the reports. Villages leveled. Families dragged into custody. Miners executed for rebellion sympathies. Their broadcasts painted us as terrorists, monsters who had ignited chaos and dragged civilians into war. And in the smoke of burning homes, people began to wonder if they were right. Inside the outpost, the air felt heavier. Even the hum of the failing generators sounded tired. Caleb slammed his fist against the table hard enough to rattle the old metal plates. "We can't sit here and watch them slaughter us. We strike back now. Hit their depots, torch their transports. Make them choke on their own fear." Ava leaned forward, her voice sharp. And when their fear turns into fire on civilians' heads, you think they'll spare the domes if we give them more reason. Julian sneered from the corner, cleaning his rifle with methodical strokes. Spare them? They've already declared war on everyone who breathes Martian air. You're dreaming if you think restraint will save lives. Celine stood with arms folded, her expression unreadable. It isn't about restraint. It's about survival. Burn too bright, and they'll bury us in ash. The room bristled with tension. Voices rose, arguments crackling like static. Ethan sat silently at his console, face pale in the glow of the screens, hands twitching but still. I felt the weight pressing down on me, heavier each day. I carried the faces of civilians we couldn't save. I carried the rage in Caleb's eyes, the bitterness in Julian's smirk, the exhaustion in Ava's silence. And then came the betrayal. It was a routine run, or it was supposed to be. Celine had planned a strike on an Earth supply convoy moving through the Phobos corridor. A quick hit and run, cripple their supply lines, show Mars that Earth wasn't untouchable. We moved in fast, rifles humming, charges primed. But the convoy wasn't unguarded. It was waiting for us. Gunfire lit the canyon walls. Drones screamed from above, their targeting systems already locked on our positions. Earth soldiers poured from the transports, their rifles cutting into us like blades. Ethan's voice cracked over comms. They knew. They knew we were coming, every detail. Caleb roared in fury, cutting down 2 soldiers before a blast threw him to the ground. Ava dragged him back, her face twisted with horror. Julian fought like a man possessed, his laughter sharp and desperate as he set off explosives to buy us seconds. I could taste the dust in my mouth, copper and grit mixing with the smell of burning flesh. My chest heaved, every breath a battle. Betrayal. It echoed in my head, louder than the gunfire. Someone inside had given us up. We barely escaped, bleeding and broken, dragging bodies through the dust while Earth's forces pulled back with calculated precision. They hadn't wanted to annihilate us. They wanted to wound us, to remind us they knew our every step. Back at the outpost, silence fell like a shroud. Celine's eyes were knives as she scanned the room. Someone fed them our plan. Caleb's fists clenched, his voice a growl. Name them. Julian leaned forward, his grin gone, his tone cold. You don't ask. You cut until the rot shows. Ava's voice cracked with fury. We don't turn on each other without proof. That's exactly what Earth wants. But the seed was planted. Doubt gnawed at every glance, every silence. And in the quiet hours when the others slept, I felt it too. Betrayal walked among us. I just didn't know whose face it wore. The shadow Marinians came again, this time without warning. Their leader's masked face appeared in the flickering light of the outpost, voice calm and cold. You bleed because Earth has teeth you cannot match. If you want to survive, you must strike deeper. You must strike silent. They opened another crate. Inside was not a rifle nor explosives, but something different. Sleek, ominous. A device that pulsed faintly with energy like a beating heart. Julian's eyes lit up with hunger. What the hell is that? The leader's modulated voice was steady. An energy weapon. A pulse detonator. You will plant it, and Earth's transports will vanish like smoke. Entire battalions erased. Ava stepped back, horror flashing in her eyes. That's not a weapon. That's annihilation. Caleb's lips curved into a savage grin. That's exactly what we need. Celine's voice cut sharp. What's the cost? The figure tilted their head. The cost is irrelevant. You want freedom? This is the blade that cuts it free. The room fractured again. Voices rose, anger and fear colliding. Ava argued until her throat was raw, warning of the blood it would spill. Caleb demanded it was the only way. Julian pushed harder, his grin feverish, his words dripping with venom. And me? I stared at the weapon, its glow painting shadows across my hands. It looked alive, hungry. When the next assault came, Earth pushing hard into the Hellies Basin, we had no choice. Their forces poured across the plains, convoys stretching like veins across the dust. Drones swarmed overhead, Soldiers marched in endless lines. We planted the device. I remember the moment clearly, the silence before the storm, the hum building in my bones as the detonator pulsed brighter and brighter, the look in Ava's eyes, pleading, furious, broken, as she whispered through the comms, "Lucas, don't." But the order was mine to give, and I gave it. The sky tore open. A pulse of energy swept across the basin, blue fire rolling like a tidal wave. Drones dropped from the air like stones. Transports melted, their steel frames folding inward as if crushed by invisible hands. Soldiers screamed, then turned to dust in the wind. The silence afterward was worse than the screams. The Heli's basin was a graveyard. Smoke curled from twisted metal. The ground itself seemed scorched, trembling under the weight of what we had unleashed. Caleb laughed, a sound more savage than human. "That's how you win a war." Julian's grin was wide, wild. "Earth won't recover from that. Not here. Not ever." Ava stared at me, her voice shaking. "You killed them all. Not just soldiers, drivers, medics, people who didn't even have a choice." Celine's silence was heavier than judgment. I stood in the ash, the weapon's afterglow still burning in my chest. The weight of it pressed down harder than gravity. We had survived. We had won. But when I looked at the basin, I wondered if there was anything left worth winning. Mars had teeth now, but Mars had blood on its hands too, and the line between freedom and ruin was thinner than dust. The Heli's Basin massacre changed everything. Earth's broadcast screamed of mass Martian terrorism, painting us as monsters who had vaporized thousands of their soldiers. But for the first time, people listened differently. Across the colonies, whispers turned into shouts. Strikes erupted in the mines, protests in the domes, sabotage in the factories. Civilians who once feared us now carried our banners, scrawled in blood and dust, "Marinia rises." But Earth didn't cower. They doubled down. They sent the Titan fleet. I saw it with my own eyes, through cracked binoculars from the cliffs above Valles Marineris. The sky burned with descending fire, dropships cutting through the thin Martian atmosphere, carriers blotting out the stars. Their fleet stretched from horizon to horizon, steel fangs descending on us. Caleb's jaw tightened as he watched. "They're not here to subdue. They're here to erase." Ava whispered, almost to herself. "We gave them the excuse." Julian spat into the dust, his grin sharp. "Then let's make sure it's worth it." Celine said nothing, but her eyes were locked on me, always on me, waiting, measuring. The battle for Mars would be fought here in the Valley of Giants. We dug in along the cliffs. The outpost transformed into a fortress of steel and desperation. Rebels from every settlement came. Miners with plasma cutters turned into rifles, farmers wielding explosives made from fertilizer, hackers running code like weapons. For the first time, Mars stood united. But unity wasn't enough. The Titan fleet was endless. The Shadow Marinians appeared once more, silent as ever, their masked leader stepping into the firelit chamber of our war council. "You cannot defeat them in numbers," the distorted voice said. "But you can cut the cord that binds them, destroy their heart." They showed us a map, buried deep beneath Valles Marineris, in a cavern older than any settlement, was the terraforming nexus. A machine older than Earth's presence on Mars. Older, perhaps, than humanity itself. Celine's voice was sharp. "You're saying Earth's fleet runs on that?" The leader's head tilted. "Not runs. Draws. Their weapons, their shields, their ship's cores, all siphon energy from the Nexus. They cannot exist here without it." Julian's grin widened. "So we cut the cord," they choke. Ava's eyes narrowed. "And what happens to Mars if we destroy it? What happens to us?" The figure was silent. That silence told me everything. The assault began at dawn, or what passed for dawn on Mars. The sky glowed faint orange, dust storms curling around the cliffs as Earth's carriers poured troops into the valley floor. Gunfire ripped the air, plasma bolts streaking across the canyon like comets. Drones screamed overhead, cutting into our lines with surgical precision. Caleb fought like a beast unleashed, rallying rebels with roars that rose even above the gunfire. Ava moved through the chaos like a shadow, dragging the wounded back, her rifle crackling in bursts of precise fire. Julian laughed as he cut down squad after squad, his rage painted across his grin. Celine's orders sliced through the comms, calm and steady, the spine of our chaos. And me, I led the push into the caverns. The Nexus pulsed in the dark, a tower of crystal and steel that stretched into infinity, humming with a rhythm that felt alive. Its light bled into the stone, casting shadows that danced like phantoms. The Shadow Marinian leader's voice echoed in my head. Strike the heart, and Earth will bleed. But Ava's voice broke through the comms, raw with fury. Lucas, stop. You destroy that, you don't just end Earth, you end us. The air, the water, the machines that keep us alive. It all runs through that nexus. I froze. My hand hovered over the detonator. Julian's voice snarled across the channel. Do it, or we all die under Earth's boot. Caleb's roar shook the cavern. We came this far. Don't you dare turn back now. Celine's silence lingered. And then, quietly, Lucas, decide. The hum of the Nexus filled me, a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I could see it now, the truth behind the rebellion, behind the Shadow Marinians, behind Earth's obsession with Mars. The Nexus wasn't human. It wasn't Martian. It was something else. A machine buried before our kind had ever reached the stars. A power too vast to belong to anyone. And if I destroyed it, Mars would die with Earth. My chest heaved. My fingers trembled on the switch. I remembered the basin, the ash, the screams. I remembered the civilians who had looked at me like a savior and then like a monster. I remembered Ava's eyes, burning with a fire that never lied. And I made my choice. I turned from the detonator and slammed my fist into Julian's chest, knocking his rifle aside. His eyes widened in fury. You coward! He screamed, lunging at me. We fought in the glow of the Nexus, his rage against my resolve. His fists cracked against my ribs, mine against his jaw. His laughter was gone, replaced with madness. You think Earth will stop? He spat blood. You think restraint wins wars? I slammed him against the crystal spire, the hum of the Nexus vibrating through us both. No, but neither does turning Mars into a graveyard. With a final shove, I sent him crashing to the ground. His body hit the stone, limp. Silence followed. When I rose, Celine was watching. No judgment, no approval, just understanding. We didn't destroy the Nexus, but we used it. Ava and Ethan, his trembling hand steady for the first time, hacked into its core. Together, they unleashed a surge of energy that rippled through the valley, not to annihilate, but to sever. The Titan fleet shuddered. Their weapons flickered, shields collapsed, engines died mid-air. One by one, their ships fell silent, crashing into the canyon walls or retreating back into the black. The battlefield went quiet. For the first time in weeks, no gunfire, no drones. Only the howl of Martian wind. Earth's fleet was broken. The war ended not with a victory, but with a stalemate written in ash. Earth couldn't hold Mars without the Nexus. Mars couldn't survive without it either. Negotiations followed. Fragile, bitter, but for the first time, Mars had a voice at the table. Caleb never forgave me for sparing the Nexus. Ava never forgave me for the basin. Celine stayed by my side, though I never knew if it was loyalty or calculation. Julian's body was buried in the caverns, though his shadow lingered in every choice we made. And me, I walked the cliffs of Valles Marineris, watching the dust storms swirl over the graves of thousands, and wondered what freedom meant when it was bought with so much blood. The Shadow Marinians vanished as suddenly as they appeared. Their leader left me with only one sentence, echoing like prophecy. You have delayed the end, not stopped it. The Nexus does not belong to you. One day it will awaken fully, and then, neither Earth nor Mars will matter. I don't know if that day will come, but when the sun rises over the red horizon, and the people of Mars breathe air they call their own, I tell myself it was worth it. Worth every scar, every betrayal, every drop of blood. because on this fragile world of dust and fire, beneath skies that once belonged only to Earth, we carved a single truth. Mars is ours.